Hey guys, welcome back to Golden Aesthetics. This is Artemis Dolgan here with Danny Padilla in Rochester, New York. One of the best gyms I've ever been to, Firehouse Samsung Gym.
Yep.
Danny, thank you so much for letting me do this, for sharing all this, your experience, your greatness, your legendary status with us. I really, really appreciate it.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you so much, bro. I really
Okay.
appreciate that. You know, there is a lot of youth that are watching our videos. They heard about you, but they don't know much about you. Would you tell us about yourself a little bit and how your career started in bodybuilding? How did your bodybuilding unfolded? How everything happened?
All right, it started when I was 7 years old. I had a brother and a cousin who were high school wrestlers. And my brother was pretty outstanding, and they used to work out with weights. And so I used to say, well, hell, I could do that too. Let me work out a little bit. But understanding that I came from a family of 10, so we couldn't go to a gym, and back then they didn't have gyms like they have now. And so I got my first York barbell set, and then as I got stronger and better, I used to go outside and take the sewer caps off and put them on as weights, and that was my first weightlifting set, and that's how it all got started. So at the age of 7, I started. I got aggressive. By the time I was 15 or 16, I was in pretty good shape. Also, I picked the right parents because genetically, my mother was a midget, but she didn't look like one. She had perfect proportions, and my father was the animal. He was a boxer, swimmer, very big and strong. And so that's how I lucked out, because I had perfect genes. You work out, I got big. But understand this, in high school, when I graduated, I only weighed 148 pounds. So it took a long time to reach my goals and all my dreams. You know, I had a lot of dreams of being the best in the world. And every time I would compete, they'd say to me, Dan, you look pretty good, but you're short. And I'd say, I didn't know I was short till you told me. I thought I was 6 foot. I feel like I'm 6'4". So part of that mentality is what helped me to be so successful. And this facility that I'm in now is the original owner. And this is where it all started, right here at Raquel's Fitness. And he moved from one street to the other, but basically, this has always been home for me. And there was a lot of good East Coast bodybuilders that come out of this facility. So it all started here for me, and I got lucky and kept it going. I competed in the AAU forever.
How did you decide that? How did you decide to compete, and how did you decide that this is going to be your career?
Well, I'll tell you how it started. I was in high school, and I had a friend who was a bodybuilder. And he said to me, Dan, you look so good, you should enter a bodybuilding contest. I said, what's that? He goes, well, they have the Mr. Rochester. And I was still in high school. So he said, why don't you come out and compete? I said, I've never done a show. So I went out and competed, and I won. So I was the youngest guy in the history of that show to win. And it all started right there. Then I kept it going.
How was the training at the beginning of your career? How did you train? How did you set the fundamentals, and what did you see worked for you the best? Okay,
what I learned back then was I was fortunate, because back when I was a youngster, there was power lifters and Olympic lifters. They hated the bodybuilders. They used to say the bodybuilders are wimps, they're pansies, they dress in their underwears, they pose. We're real, right, we're men. We don't look in the mirror, we just lift weights. So I was pretty strong as a power lifter, and I was pretty gifted as an Olympic lifter, but bodybuilding was my passion. So I did everything. So from these guys, I learned how to do a proper squat, a proper clean, a proper press. You know, so I did all the basic exercises that make you thick.
Did you lift heavy?
I lifted very heavy for back then. For instance, I was able to squat 500 with no problem for reps. I was able to do barbell rows with 315 for no reps in perfect form. Press behind the head, 2 1/4 with no problem. Bench press, I did a 450 bench weighing 168. I was able to do inclines 405 with no problem. And I did it all the time. And so I built a very good base. So by the time I got into the diet aspect of it, I had a tremendous base, because everybody'd say, how the hell did you get so thick? You're so thick. I did the same exercises for 25 years, and everybody would say, oh, you got to change the routine. Why? Just get better at that routine. If 225 is light, go up 10 pounds. But so I stuck to the basic exercises: bench, incline, flies, pullovers. I did it all the time, and as I got better at it, I just kept raising the weights. I would do squats, leg extensions, leg curls. But remember, back in my day, the machines they had, I couldn't even reach them. I couldn't do a proper leg curl because they didn't make it small enough for me. So I had to count on the squat. I mean, that's the kind of crap I went through.
How was you eating when you just started? Did you eat everything?
Well,
you saw
see,
inside, or?
back then I ate anything I wanted to, but based on my heritage, I used to eat a lot of rice and beans with chicken. And even back, you know, I ate steaks, but I just didn't have an affair with steaks. But it was really a balance without even knowing it. We were poor, so we had oatmeal all the time, and we had eggs and stuff of that nature, and we had eggs, and so it was always balanced. And as I just ate the same all the time, but when it came to contest time, I finally learned how to diet in the sense of controlling my carbohydrates. And I got that through Weider's magazine. Joe Weider, as much as he was a pain in my pastuchas, was a great inspiration. And the reality is Joe Weider is the guy that brought me, exposed me, and showed me to the world. So I owe a lot to Joe Weider.
How did you guys start dieting and prepping for the contest? Was a low carb diet? Was it carb cycling? Was it moderate carbs and a lot of cardio?
Believe it or not, I didn't do any of that stuff. I was an athlete, so I used to play football, baseball all the time. I used to jog all the time. So what I did was just counted my calories. I used to say, okay, I'm on 3,000 calories, let me drop to 2,000. I would stay at 2,000 for so many weeks. And then right before a show, as I did research, and Atkins became very popular, I would get on 100 carbs or 60 carbs, but I would only do it for 14 days. None of this crap these guys are doing for I don't know how many days in a row. That's insane. If you're in good shape, all you need is 14 to 21 days to cut it out. And that's how I did it. And I was natural. I was lucky because I had a lot of muscularity and I didn't have to worry about it.
How was your? When finally you moved to California, you went to California. How was it for you to go to the Gold's Gym and see all the guys work out? How was the atmosphere for you?
Well, see, it was phenomenal because my first exposure was I went to Madison Square Garden. Okay, the AAU said, you're not that good, or you can never win because you're too short. And I competed in the Mr. America AAU, and I competed in the juniors, and I did okay. I was in the 20th, high ranking for a little guy. But what they used to do with us, it was like a Miss America pageant. You went into this gym, there's no lockers or nothing. You change your clothes, you put a suit and tie up, and you line up like cattle, and they ask you, why would you be a Mr. Mr. America? What would you do for the title? And finally, the last time I had to do that, I looked at them and I said, you know what? I'm never going to be Mr. America because you guys are never going to give me that chance. You guys are a bunch of flamers anyways. So I'm going to the IFBB. And everybody's like, oh my God, you're all done in the AAU. I said, who cares? And at the time, I was competing with Pete Krumkowski, who ended up buying Gold's Gym. And he's, of course, from our area too. He was Mr. America second time. And this poor guy couldn't win, but he deserved to win. So finally, I went to Madison Square Garden. I did the Mr. USA show, and I won. And that was how I got propelled. So Joe Weider said, come on out to California. We're going to make a star out of you, a giant killer.
So he came out with a nickname for
Well,
you?
believe it or not, it was Wayne DeMillia and him that did that. And so he said, I'll pay all your expenses. And so I went out there for the fact it was the Mr. Universe. And that's when they were filming Pumping Iron.
Can you tell me the story about Pumping Iron you?
Yeah, it's like when I got out there, I walked out there and there was Mike Menser and there was Arnold and the guys. I walked in the Gold's Gym for the first time in my life. It was like, oh my God, I've been seeing this place in my mind, dreaming about it. And there I was. And there's Butler and there's Robbie, there's Arnold, there's Franco, there's Frank Zane, Ed Corney. It was just all the guys. Mike Katz, Ken Waller, just all the guys. And of course they introduced themselves. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. So we met. So Joe Weider said, you got to train because you're going to compete in the universe. I says, okay. So I'm working out and Butler says to me, Danny, I'd like to have you in this Pumping Iron. I says, well, how much are you going to pay? He says, well, we're not going to pay you nothing. I says, I don't want to be in that then. You ain't going to give me no money. So I was always about making money because my dad was a businessman.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, you got to hustle. So I figured, how big is this? So I did a little stuff with them, but they followed us all the way to South Africa. So now I'm in South Africa for a week, doing some videos, Arnold, we're eating breakfast, the whole pump and iron scenario. I was in a lot of the video, and a lot of Europeans were coming to me saying, oh my God, no one's gonna beat you in the lightweight. So that year would have been the first time in the history of the sport that a lightweight, a middleweight, and a heavyweight in America competed, and we had a chance to win all 3 divisions. No one had ever done that. So the reality is you had Mike Katz and you had Ken Waller. And so the rule that I got was, when you guys go out there, you guys are already on the team, you and Robbie. Katz and Waller will pulse down that weekend, and may the best man represent the heavyweight. Well, little did I know that the last minute they decided to throw me out. I was kicked out or let go, and they had 2 heavyweights in the middleweight, but they had never told me. So the morning of the show, I'm eating breakfast, and I go to get on the bus, and they said, we got some bad news for you. What's up? Well, you're not going to compete. I said, are you out of your mind? What do you mean I'm not going to compete? What happened? What did I do? And he said, nothing. We're going to use 2 heavyweights and a lightweight. So, of course, I went to Ben Weider, and they had to drag me out because I was ready to choke him. And he says, it's out of my hands. You know, I said, how could it be out of your hands? You're the boss.
Yeah.
So now I go there, and they said, well, you can at least watch the show. Now, why the hell would I want to watch the show that I trained all summer for? I trained at Gold's Gym with the best in the world, and now I can't compete. So I'm sitting there like totally just dethroned, like what the hell? And all of a sudden Oscar State, who was the head of all of Europe, he was a short guy like me, and he was an Englishman. He said, Donnie, why are you not competing here today? I said, America don't want me. He said, what? What do you mean? They bumped me. So now this guy from Portugal comes over, and he says, you're not competing? I go, nobody wants me. Well, we don't have a lightweight. Would you like to compete for Portugal? I said, if you'll have me. So Oscar State says, well, how the hell are we going to do this? If you're in America, I says, I'm not on America's team. He goes, but are you Portuguese? I said, well, my dad went through Spain, probably through Portugal, to get to Puerto Rico to marry my mother. So he said, with a story that stupid, I got to let you in. So now Arnold and the guys are all sitting in the front, and they see me like, what the freak? How's he on stage? They let him go. I'm walking with a Portugal banner. So now they're crying with laughter, like, man, this crazy bastard got in there anyway.
You want to be on stage.
I want to win. So now we're going through the Mr. Universe, and I'm kicking ass. I'm winning round 1, round 2. It's down to 3 of us. I firmly believe that they picked me to be Mr. Universe. And at the time they were ready to crown my ass, there was a protest. Belgium and somebody else protested, and I was kicked out again because they were protesting because I couldn't be on Portugal's team. But they knew I had won the show. In my heart, I won the show. So now Pump and Iron's filming all this, but they can't show it because it makes the IFBB look too stupid.
Yeah, that's a lot of people are asking me questions like, hey, asking about Pumping Iron and what really happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's crazy. So for 20 years, I'm blaming the agent that represented us, this poor guy, and I'm saying it's his fault because he kicked me out. And it wasn't until years later where somebody said, well, it might have been, we don't know for sure, but we think it was somebody involved with Pump and Iron that wanted those 2 heavyweights in. And they're the ones that did it. So I never knew. I don't exactly know. That was just what was told to me.
And how was your relationship with the Arnold and Frank Zane when you showed up? Did they give you the recognition, give you the credit?
Absolutely. Arnold's always been fair to me. Frank Zane's always been a friend. I mean, I always understand that these guys all have egos. So I think when it comes to these guys, if they think you could beat them, they're going to be a little rough on you. But in my case, I came a little late. And as I went through these tragedies in bodybuilding, I became lazy. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to go play baseball. I'm going to do something else because, you can only get beat up so many times before you say, I'm not taking this serious. So Joe Weider would always say to me, Don, my God, you're the greatest bodybuilder. You could be phenomenal. You got to take this serious. As a joke. For what? So you guys could let me down again? Think about this. I competed over there. I got let go. I competed in Nimes, France, and the representative of Egypt didn't want me to win that show because he said my guy can't lose. Egypt would be devastated. Macaulay, who was a phenomenal physique.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they wanted.
He's a master of hiding his weak
right.
spots.
I beat him, and they wanted to change that. And so it was the kind of luck that I had. I competed in New York against Robbie. I scored a perfect score and lost. I scored 300, he got 298, but he beat me. They're still trying to explain that one to me, too. So that's just another show. As a matter of fact, I was doing work. I came back to the gym for that night of the champions, and I had like less than a month to get in shape. And at the time, Mike Menser, Casey Viator, Robbie were competing, and they were pulling 300 points. They were getting perfect scores. So I get in there, and Joe says to me, he's taking pictures of Robbie, and he's taking pictures of Mike Menser, and he says, Don, you'll never be ready for the show, so we might as well not bother with photos. So Robbie says to Joe, don't get this little bastard going because he will do whatever it takes to compete. So I said to Joe, in 21 days, I will win this show. And he says, all right, Don, good luck. So I says, well, I put my foot in a bag of crap. Now what am I going to do? So for 21 days, I had an egg for breakfast, a piece of fried chicken for lunch, a small salad, and an egg for dinner. And I was training like a madman. And I got in tremendous shape, and that's where you see some of those shots where my hair was long and I had those sneaks on.
Yeah.
And I did the vacuum. That was that show.
Legendary.
Those are great shots. And Joe Weider took those shots because he flipped out when he saw me. And so I flew to New York, and one of the guys said to me, Dan, you and I are friends, but, this is showtime now. Now it's war. And I said, look, put oil on my back because that's all you're going to do today. And I got into that show, and I said, I got to do something totally different. So I posed the Short People by Randy Newman. Short people got nobody. When that song came on, the audience went nuts. Little eyes, beep, beep, beep. And I did all that, and I got a perfect score. The audience, I got a standing ovation. I had to come back out. I mean, they loved it. And then there was Ed Corney after me, and then there was Mike and Robbie. Make a long story short, that was the first time they ever did pose downs. They said, we're going to do a pose down, but it's only for the audience. I said, okay. I said, I'm the winner. I scored 300. Well, we posed down, me and Robbie, posed down again. I said, what's going on here? After about the fourth pose down, I said, all right, I'm done. I already know what's going on here. And so they gave Robbie the show. He was in tremendous shape, but I thought that night I was more balanced, better legs. I was pretty sharp, but they gave it to him anyways. And if he deserved to win, he deserved to win. He was pretty good. And I had to eat that loss too. I had a perfect score and had to eat it. And then in 81, the Olympia, the same crap. The guys,
What happened at 81 Olympia?
the 81 Olympia, I got calls from Mike Boyer
What was he
Cole,
weighed there?
178 pounds. Everybody said he's 150 because I was so shredded. See, and what happens to me is when I go on a diet, my face caves in automatically. If I were to start dieting tomorrow, in 10 days, my body would give shit, but my face would just cave in. That's what goes. And then the rest is my butt. My butt goes nuts. I don't have any. All I got is a crack in my back. And that's what diet does to me. So in 81, I got all the guys calling me saying, don't go, because the show's fixed for Franco, because Franco, because Arnold just did the other show. And I was in Australia when Arnold won that show. And you know what? He wasn't the best that he could be, but it was enough to win. And nobody was so overpowering that they pushed him off the stage. The guys were good, but it was a close show. Could he have lost? Yeah. Could he have won? Yeah. But in 81, Franco made a big comeback. He had devastated his leg. I mean, it was a terrible tragedy for him. But he just wasn't the Franco that we were used to seeing. Franco at his best is a monster. And that night he was a little off. He had a bitched hit. His legs were weak, but it just wasn't enough. And then for that show, I came in shredded, Tom Platz came in phenomenal. Chris Dickerson to me was okay, but I just
Tom Platz, both of you.
yeah, that was the best year for Tommy, and he's never. After that, he got hurt. So that's why I say, when shows are not done right, you hurt a guy, because here's a guy couldn't come back because he tore his bicep. But then you had Roy Callender, and you had Waller. You had a bunch of guys. But in '81, I was crisp. You couldn't get any sharper than I was. I didn't even have to pose. I just got on stage and hit a couple shots, and people knew already. I mean, Samir Banu was calling L.A., I think Padilla's the winner, nobody could beat him. And so I knew the tragedy that was going to happen. So I tried to disrupt the show. I was bad. They put us up in the line, round one, you stand there. I walked out of the line, walked over to Franco's, threw a most muscular at him. And they said, Dan, get back in line or we're going to deduct the point. Big deal. I already know what's going on there. Got back in line. We do round two. I get out of the line. I go through a most muscular. I do a lat spread. He starts posing. Tommy gets out, starts posing. We're having a pose down. We're only in round two. So they're all screaming and yelling, get back in line. What are you guys doing? Danny, you're going to lose a point if you do that again. Okay, I'll behave. And so that's what happened. And then again, we did the show. We hit another round, and I just got out and started posing in the middle of the stage. And everybody started posing, so the show was disrupted. But the reality is, I was fifth. They called me fifth. I thought I could have been top three. I thought I could have won it. I thought Tommy could have won it. I mean, it's up to you, depending on what you're looking for. And they never showed the best shots of me because of the fact that, the IFBB...
Yeah, you won't find much of...
You won't find any video except for what Franco made. There's no photo. Why World of Sports was filming, that's gone. Nobody could find it. It was kind of weird how everything disappeared. And the only photos they showed were photos that kind of made Franco look like the winner.
Danny, why do you think it's happening in the sport? It's happening still right now. Why is it bodybuilding is so fixed? I mean, every sport, if you look at any sport, any sport, it's all very political. But bodybuilding...
For me, it's like the term fix is ugly. So I think back then, it was the powers that be, in the sense of, Franco was out there, so he felt like I have the right because I hurt my leg, and, like a champion gets 2 rounds free anyways. So he felt that's what he should have done. And the judges, I thought, were afraid to vote against Franco because the powers that be. I mean, let's realize that Arnold has a lot of power, a lot of influence. I'm not saying that Arnold said fix this show. I'm pretty sure he was just saying, here's how Arnold would help him. Doesn't he look phenomenal? My God, he tore that leg, and look how incredible he looks. That would be it. So the judges are saying, if Arnold says that, then it must be. He didn't say, hey, fix it, but that little bit of an influence could help Franco. And to his credit, he looked pretty good, but he wasn't Mr. Olympia. And you know what happened? Today it's worse in the sense of, I think back then, you got pretty good judging. And as you became a bigger name, once in a while you got a free round. It happens in boxing, it happens in swimming, It happens everywhere. The champions always get a free round. And so, but today, the guys can't make money as a bodybuilder because the fact that they take so much product, they've hurt themselves. So there's nobody that'll really sponsor them except a vitamin company. So if a vitamin company, and I'm not saying this happens, but let's just say a vitamin company, you're running a show and they say, look, my guy's got to win, here's $100,000. Are you going to say, well, no, I can't do that? We're in a country, capitalism, money counts. And most of these people say, who cares? It's just a show. But a lot of these guys they put their heart and soul in these shows. And what happens, what you'll learn with bodybuilders, if I deserve second, I want second. If I deserve fifth, I want fifth. But Arnold used to have an old saying that he would say to us, and he'd say, Donnie, how did you do? I did second. He goes, you mean second last? So, first last. So for him, if you didn't win, you're last anyways.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you're second, you pick up a check. But what you learned in this sport right away is you better go to school, get a good education, because your body comes and goes on any given time. And the reality is, if you can't sell yourself, I don't care how good you are, you're not going to make any money in this sport.
That's what Albert DeCals told me. He says, man, you got to have a job, and You gotta have an education, because bodybuilding will not pay your bills.
It will not pay the bills. It's really more of a, I always say, see, my dad and I owned a grocery store. I always worked. So bodybuilding for me was more of an escape. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I used to be a grocery clerk. I ran a store. I had my people come in. And then for me, it was all about, okay, I'm going to be Dr. Jekyll. I'm going to be the best bodybuilder in the world, I think. I hope. I will. And I would train for it. And the best thing is I would either win or lose. I'd come home. My dad would say, how'd you do today? I said, not bad, Dad. Look, I got 4 trophies. How many checks they give you? None. Put them up there. Here's the mop. Let's go to work.
Danny, what do you think of, what was your inspiration? What defines bodybuilding for you? I mean, it obviously has changed since, 80s and 70s to what it is now. When you look at bodybuilders today, what do you see and what do you think it should be?
Well, see, for me, I always say to people, look, you got to fit into what's happening. Back in our day, when I was a youngster, Steve Rees, Reg Parks, these guys come out and they had the little waistlines, V-taper, and the women went crazy for them. And so they were that guy. Steve Rees, like the most handsome man on the planet with a physique. Yeah. So everybody wanted that physique. So back then it was about the V-taper. They'd wear the shirt. You see the little waistline. And then about 10, 12, 15 years later, we got bigger. Bigger legs, bigger upper body, more balance. But we invented CrossFit, because we used to go to the pit and we used to lift weights there and play basketball and play volley. It was a CrossFit type thing. So the guys were pretty athletic.
And functional.
Right, I call it functioning muscle. And what I tell people today is this, look, not making fun of the new guys, or even back then in my time, there were some guys that were dysfunctional. I always believed that if I got a 20-inch arm, I got to be able to go 5 rounds with you somewhere, whether it's in the street, whether it's in a ring, because I don't want to piss down my pants 30 seconds after I start swinging my arms. And that's what will happen to these guys. I don't see any aerobics at all. They don't believe in aerobics. They tell me you can't do aerobics because it destroys muscle. Science says that aerobics is not aerobics, so you do 2 hours. I don't see anybody doing 2 hours. I used to do 5 hours on a bike.
I think you're going to lose your muscle.
Right, and you can't, because if you think you're going to lose, you feed it. But the reality is the guys are huge now. Everything that we wanted, they did, except they're above huge now. And am I against it? Not really. Would I want to be one of these guys? No, not at all. I wouldn't fit in. Right, and for me, it's like, this is the era. So I'm not going to disrespect them, because, it's the new era. That's what's in style right now. But like everything else, a new thing comes in, eventually goes out, and the old thing comes back. And I think that's what's going to happen with bodybuilding. They're going to go back to the old style a little bit, because this new thing kicked in. It was phenomenal. These guys were phenomenal. They were huge. You got to give them credit for the achievement. But all of a sudden, it's like, I was telling my buddy, I have a shirt, I didn't wear it for 6 years. It sat in the room, I just didn't wear it. And then now my sweetheart says, well, that's old-fashioned now. Now it came back. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. The old school physique is coming back. It's going to be a little bigger, though, but it's coming back. People want to see more of a balanced, pleasing physique with an aesthetic posing routine. Back in our time, it was an art. You had to be able to control the muscle as well as work out. And you did a pose.
The thing is the difference between training styles, what you did and what people did back in the day, and what it is now.
I think back in the day we overtrained a little bit because we wanted to be that guy. So today you have a little more science. But the difference today is when I put my arm up, it's for real. Now these guys are sticking oil in there, and 3 days later they got a 20-inch arm, except when they work out in the gym, it's leaking a little bit. So the thing is, for me, do I accept it? Absolutely, because it's part of the program, but it's not real muscle. I don't see them training as hard as we used to train. But they all say to me, well, we don't have to. This is the new science. You eat this way, you do that. But they're not athletic.
Let me ask you this. What would be an advice you would give to young bodybuilders, and especially, there are a lot of kids that are asking, hey man, I'm very short. How is the training for short guys is different than for the bigger guys?
All right. To me, the training for a short guy is this. Because of the fact that you don't have the height, you have to make sure that every muscle is worked to proportion. And that means calves, hamstrings, tricep. I just used to do a lot of work. I would train my calves like they were the weakest body part on me. I would do a donkey calf raise, a standing calf raise, a seated calf raise. I worked the calves just like they were biceps. Everybody you see works their biceps, and then everything else they kind of almost work.
Yeah.
Well, I knew that because of my height, I'm going to be constantly checkmate. They're going to screw you for whatever reason. So I always made sure that I got in such complete, thick, balanced, beautiful physique so that when I would go out there, people, they beat me. They wanted to hurt me, but they couldn't because they said, geez, the guy looks so good. I just can't push him out. To the point where as I got better and better and believed in myself, I just started taking over the stage. I walk out there and say, I'm the guy. I'm 6'2", you just don't know it. See, what people don't understand, like in my last show, 92, I competed against Momo Benazia, Dorian Yates, and there were 75 contestants in the night of the champion. I had been gone for 10 years, and somebody made a bet with me that I couldn't compete with the new generation because it's all new, all this crap. And I got in shape. I went to Toronto. I got second to Eddie Robinson, who even if I could beat him, I couldn't because the IFBB, that was the new blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy that they were going to produce. And then in New York, they had to let Dorian had to be top 3 because he was the new guy from Europe. And he had to get into the Olympia, and I already had got a shot at Toronto, so I was in. And Momo, his company, had paid the promoter, I don't know how much money, he had to win. Plus, he was pretty good. He was kicking butt all over Europe. But when I walked in on stage at 245, huge, muscular, I just sat there and looked. The audience, you could hear a pin drop. They didn't even know who I was. Who is this guy?
245 at your height is monstrous.
It was ridiculous how big I was. But I was in tremendous shape. I didn't dry out like David because I already was told, everybody's fighting for third. Okay, well, I kicked ass for third, won it easily. And that was the last time I really competed because after that I went to Europe. I basically didn't even die. I did a tour, and then I was done. And then I went, of course, I joined that other federation later. They talked me into it. But what I tell young kids today is short bodybuilders have to balance their physique. If you don't work every body part like it's weak, then you're going to get beat because you're never going to beat a big guy. And now today, with the equipment, with how big these guys are coming now, it's pretty hard. But I still think if I was around, let's say if I was 30 and had what they have now, I'd still be kicking ass.
Oh, absolutely. I think you will take the 212 division, hands down. What would you recommend to young bodybuilders that just come into this sport? What would be a great advice because you went through a pretty rough career, through a lot of up and downs. What would be like an ultimate advice you would give to the younger kids?
Well, I always tell the young kids, if you build a house and there's a fire, have 4 exits so you don't get burned because bodybuilding will burn you. And always remember, it's an opinionated sport. You could be the best guy there and not win. So you can't put your eggs in all one basket. You got to have a job. I always say the biggest mistake I made was not going to college. I had an opportunity to. My dad was a hardworking man, so it wasn't like I didn't have the brains or the money. I was working in bodybuilding, thinking I'm going to make $1 million. Well, my dad used to say it's easy to make $1 million, but try to hang on to it. So I tell the guys, go to school, get a good education, whatever it is you feel like. If you want to be in the bodybuilding sport, you can be in an exercise program of some sort, nutritional, get your degrees so that there's life after bodybuilding. Don't be like these guys in the NFL and the NBA. They get a little bit of money. A lot of them don't finish school. And if they didn't make enough money and keep it, they end up homeless and broke.
The majority of bodybuilders today, they're struggling.
They are struggling because there's no money.
Products they can just to make it.
And it's sad because as hard as they work, I always say put that energy toward making money. You know,
Arnold was an ultimate example of how the bodybuilding.
You know, I will say that Arnold, as long as I knew him, I remember laying on the beach, and he would say, "I'm going to retire from this bodybuilding. My last show, I'm going to be an actor, then governor." That's how far back he was thinking. And that's a true story. And I say, wow. And he meant it. But he was going to school. He was taking business management courses. He was doing a lot of quiet stuff that nobody knew about. He was an achiever. He was a go-getter. And so you got to, as much as people hate or like him or dislike him, you know, Arnold was rough, but he was fair. You can't hate a guy who did so good. You got to admire him and say, okay. Like my dad used to say, if you want to be the best bum in the world, go find the best bum and ask him how he got there. You want to be a rich man, go to a rich guy and say, how did you do this? And that's what you learn. And so I'm telling these kids, this new group of kids, everybody thinks they're going to be the next Mr. America or the next Mr. Olympia, whatever title's out there. But you look in the gym, they're all on crap. They're all taking every vitamin there is known to man, and none of them win. So how do you win? You get even by good education and making sure that you're prepared for when that storm comes, because that storm will come.
Do you think that people try to substitute the lack of genetics, lack of talent with the vitamins nowadays?
Absolutely. What you have now is, I was laughing so hard because I was told that there was this female competing and some trainer was injecting her butt with fluid to make it rise. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you that desperate? So, and that's what's going on in our sport. It became Hollywood. You know, you go to Hollywood, they do their face up, they inject, they have a surgery. They're not even the same person you knew. And now bodybuilding has gone from a physical specimen of exercise excellence, genetics, super athlete type almost, to a make-believe. When he goes in the room and he takes everything off, who do you got now? So it's kind of freaky.
Danny, I want to thank you so much for your time, for doing this for us. I wish you guys check it out, Danny Padilla's clothing line, our website, goldenaesthetics.com. It's the best. It's one of a kind. It's a giant killer himself. I want you to check out this facility. If you're ever in New York, Rochester, upstate New York, this is the best gym to train. This is much better than Life Fitness. You come in here, you feel the spirit, and you want to lift weights, and you want to become the best. I think this is where champions are made. They're not made in, air-conditioned gyms and everything is nice, with the carpets on the floors and everybody's talking. They're made here with the real iron and the real spirit of the real gym. Danny, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It's a huge honor,
Okay,
man.
it's a pleasure. Don't be afraid to buy a shirt because it'll feed my kids.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much, dude.
All
I
right,
appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.